Just making a test video, which I may upload, but I'm not entirely sure. A lot of people have been asking me recently why I like Nietzsche, given his reputation as somebody who justifies kicking other people in the face or is a Nazi or whatever. People sort of say, why on earth would you be attracted to a philosophy like that? Well, needless to say, I disagree with the common view of Nietzsche, I suppose. And by common, I would use the somewhat pejorative upper class sense, where that which is common is probably, by virtue of its commonness, not really all that reliable. Most people live in a state of illusion, and I think most people agree on that. But in any case, suffice it to say that I do not see Nietzsche the way people think that Apocalypse Now would illustrate what a Nietzschean human being would be like, the movie Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola, or various other movies to sort of show what happens when you become extremely arrogant and you're strong. I don't think Nietzsche is saying that at all. He may be saying the exact opposite of that. But the problem is the world is complex and people want simple answers. And Nietzsche's philosophy, one could say it's simple, but it's not, because it's not like the way that Western minds normally think. It doesn't work like that, in my opinion. That's why he writes quite differently from other philosophers. I've always said that to understand Nietzsche, you have to understand him from a psychological point of view. He's talking about what goes on in your own mind in real time. Why you think the thoughts you think, what your motives are, what is behind your motives, what your real motives are that may be hidden from yourself, etc. Just beginning to think like that, I think, disorients an awful lot of people and turns them off. But I've been doing this for 30 years now, quite a long time. Not so much with Nietzsche, but with my interest in Indian philosophy. I've discovered that Tantra seems to be, which is an Indian version of life affirmation, seems to be quite similar to Nietzsche's outlook, and just as misunderstood. When I say Tantra in the West, a lot of people think of orgies. Well, go to India and you'll discover that most tantrics are celibate. So there's one generalization down the tubes right away. So I apply that to Nietzsche, when if people think that Tantra is a sex cult and they think Nietzsche is a Nazi, well, Nietzsche is probably the opposite of a Nazi, in my opinion, and he's the opposite, in my opinion, of a sex cult, or Tantra is. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, or make it clear that what I think of Nietzsche is wildly perhaps at variance with what a lot of people think of Nietzsche. For example, in that vein of reading him psychologically as opposed to, I don't know how you would put it, but logically, I guess. I'll give you a quote from the Antichrist. It's one of the most jarring ones I can find. And it could mean two separate things depending on what's already in your mind. Let me just read it and see what happens. What is good? This is Nietzsche, by the way. All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. What is bad? All that proceeds from weakness. What is happiness? The feeling that power is increasing, that a resistance is being overcome. Now, how does that grab you right off the pop, when you sort of go, all right, if this is one quote that I can sort of gauge how to view Nietzsche, how does he make you think? Well, a lot of people are going to think that, they're going to have visions of huge SS men shooing Jewish children into Auschwitz, right? Like the scene like we kind of saw in Schindler's List, right? These are weak children from the wrong race, and we're going to just put them in Auschwitz and kill them all, right? Like I think, I'm kind of overstating it here, but I think that a lot of people do honestly read that passage that way. That they do believe that Nietzsche is saying that weak people are evil. I think that that's the way a lot of people read this. In fact, almost anybody who comes across it for the first time. But he's only writing for a very small select group of people when he writes this. People who kind of already understand what's in his head already. Now, To explain my view of this aphorism, what is good, all that heightens the feeling of power in man, I'll ask you this. Have you ever suffered from acute depression? Acute, severe depression? To the point where you can't get out of your bed? I have. I've suffered from that before. For quite a long period of time, where you just can't understand the point of doing anything. You don't have the motivation or the energy or the desire to do anything. This is particularly relevant today, with probably a lot of people questioning their lives, right? Sort of saying, why do I bother doing anything? What's the value of me getting out of bed in the morning when the world is all screwed up and I just don't want to deal with it all? That's weakness, right? You're feeling weak. You're feeling discouraged. You're feeling like you don't have the strength to just get out of bed, just to face the world. Every day is just listlessness. You're just dragging yourself from one day to the next. And it takes all your strength to do that. Okay, I have felt this. And it's horrible. It's the absolute, in many ways, it's the nadir of the human experience, like as low as you can get. You almost think, what's the point of drawing my next breath? Well, it just happens, so I might as well do it, right? But there's no point to any of it. None of this has any meaning. None of this means, there's no purpose to anything. That mindset is what Nietzsche is referring to, in my opinion. He's referring to the idea that takes root in your head that everything is pointless and it drains you. It sucks the strength out of you the way cancer gets a hold of you and draws all your body's strength to itself. Depression does this to you, right? Depression attacks your coping mechanisms. It doesn't just attack you and your health. It attacks the things that you have in you to cope with the world. That's what depression does. It's like HIV or AIDS, I guess. Your psychological or emotional immune system is attacked when you're depressed. Nietzsche says something evil has happened to you. That weakness is almost like a palpable evil. If you've ever recovered from a severe depression, you will know exactly what Nietzsche means when he says, what is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself. What is happiness? It's the feeling that power increases. Well, use the word power in its broadest sense. There is power over other human beings, yes, but there's also the feeling of power. And remember, he talks about the feeling of power, the feeling of being empowered, the feeling of being in control of your own life, the feeling of being energized, enthusiastic, the feeling of being interested, having a reason why you should get out of bed, having a reason to draw your next breath, having a reason to want to go out there and live your life regardless of how the world is. That's power. It's closer, in my view, to the Hindu notion of Shakti, which is more like a sense of being empowered, or power as in a power company, a company that sells energy. That's how we use the word power in English as well. Power, you've powered something with electricity. You've powered your car using gasoline. You've energized your car. That's, in my opinion, what he's referring to here in that quote. The feeling of having power in you. Evil or bad is the feeling of having your power drained from you, your power to do the minimum number of things in life, your power to do the dishes every single day, day in, day out, your power to shovel your driveway, the snow every day, day in, day out, the power to deal with the weather that I have to deal with day in, day out. That's power, right? It's strength, it's energy, it's endurance. That's what Nietzsche is saying is good. He's not saying that people who have these characteristics are bad. He's saying that something bad has happened to those people. And then when people come out of this, like when I came out of my severe depression 30 plus years ago, or however long ago it was, I felt like I went to the doctor and I said, okay, it came on slowly. It took a few months for this to happen, 6 months, a year perhaps, I don't know. But I feel now like I'm on drugs, right? Like, that's what I told my doctor. I said, this is unnatural because I feel so good. I feel like I'm high. And my doctor did a whole bunch of tests on me, asked a bunch of questions. He said, no, 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 no. You're not insane, Andy. You're feeling normal. that's, uh, that's a lot of depressed people notice this. They had no idea how nice the world was. So goodness had come to me. I no longer lacked motivation to breathe. I no longer lacked motivation to do anything. I became interested in the world again. I became interested in my life. I became drawn to things. I became interested in just going down and sitting in a coffee shop and looking out the window at the world going by, whereas before that would have struck me as utterly futile, pointless, and I didn't have the strength to do it. That's one small aphorism in Nietzsche. Okay, one. There's so much more, but suffice it to say, that one aphorism and the two different ways, radically different ways that it can be read, are things that one must bear in mind at all times, in my opinion, when reading Nietzsche. Oh, I probably will upload this, but we'll see. Choose life.